Hey, welcome to Motherhood Equipped, where faith, wellness, ambition, and birth all come together to equip moms to lead with courage and unshakable purpose. I'm Brigitte. I'm so grateful you're here, and I'm committed to learning out loud and living my motherhood journey on purpose right alongside you. So let's link arms and step into all the potential that you already have. Hello, you guys. This is Brigitte again with another solo episode because it is my turn to do Luke. His birth story. He is my second. So if you listen to my birth story with my first, Russell, I had a home birth, but that's not where I started. I started a hospital birth plan, and then I moved to a birth center, and I eventually settled on a home birth. So that is proof that you don't have to have it all figured out right up front. You know, the second you figure out that or find out that you're pregnant, not a big deal. You can change, which is what I did. But then my birth with Luke ended up in a hospital, and it's the reverse of that. I had a planned home birth turned hospital birth. So if you want a lot of perspective, this is going to be it, because now I have a whole bunch of hindsight bias with various experiences to bring to the table. I do personally, a lot of people asked me after I had my birth with Luke, they said, okay, well, which one would you choose, if you could have the perfect birth or whatever? And I would say, honestly, I would 100% choose a home birth again. Don't let that, stay with me. I've shared in my other podcast episode, just like walking through Russell's birth, I do see the beauty, and I respect all the different ways to go around birth. And ultimately it comes down to the most important thing is that you feel comfortable, confident, and competent in your ability to make decisions, have autonomy around your birth, things like that. And home birth is where I feel like I have all of that. So that is what I feel most comfortable with. But I'm going to walk you through kind of start to finish what happened with Luke. I learned so much with this, you guys. My birth with Luke, so my birth with Russell was really just like birthing motherhood. It was this journey of being scared, pregnant for the first time, not knowing anything, to becoming confident enough to just feel competent going into a home birth, and then being on the other side of that, all the things. Just that was a whole journey in and of itself. And then my journey with Luke's birth is one that is like, honestly, like the Lord wrecked me in the most beautiful way with this birth. And so it's in hindsight that I'm able to say, I think that I was elevating my ideal birth a little bit too much. And he said, you know what, Brigitte, guess what? I'm in control. And he gave me the opposite of what I thought I wanted. And it ended up being exactly what I needed. It was hard. It was much more challenging than Russell's birth, but it taught me a lot of lessons. So I'm going to share that with you guys today. So we were living at Boston at the time, found out I was pregnant. I immediately found a midwife that I liked. She did our home visits, whatever, all was good. About halfway through my pregnancy, we found out that he was breech. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, a breech baby. The whole world says that we have to be nervous about that. But I did my research and I found voices. Now, I've had a lot of friends who had breech babies, and they were not, they did not have access, were not given these perspectives, and they ended up going a different route. I personally found voices that told me I could do it. I found voices that were reputable, experienced, professional midwives, OBGYNs, you whole kit and caboodle of various professional backgrounds and levels of experience saying, hey, breech is a variation of normal, and you can just have a epidural-free, quote unquote, natural, whatever, breech birth. You can even do it at home. There's no big deal. There was one big study. I won't go into the weeds. I can put in the show notes for somebody who's really interested, but there was a big study that was actually eventually debunked. And unfortunately, what is more well known is the study that said or concluded that, a breech birth is dangerous to deliver vaginally. What's not as often talked about or shared, especially with moms who have breech babies, is that myth or that study was debunked as not accurate, not well done. And the rates of a successful, healthy delivery are extremely similar between a head-down baby and a breech baby delivered vaginally. They are extremely similar. So it's really important, you guys, it can be skewed all sorts of ways. And unfortunately, we are relying on a lot of old data to inform moms right now that like, oh my gosh, having a breech baby vaginally is so dangerous. And so anyway, I really got in the weeds. I really looked at all of this. I had a lot of help. Oh my gosh. I had so many people come alongside me to the first journey was bringing me into a place of being comfortable and confident. Like, okay, my baby's breech, I'm good with that, right? Because of course, being anxious is not good for your baby either. And I knew that. So I knew I needed to work through that and research and read and learn. And I had so much help getting to that place. And then I had to make a decision. Like, what do I want to do? I talked to my midwife personally. I felt comfortable having her do a home birth breech delivery. She had done them countless times in the past. She felt comfortable. I felt comfortable. So that is what I decided to move forward with. But anyway, this is where things get a little haywire. And, I want to share this like really openly, but I don't want this to scare anybody away from a home birth, because I think that my experience with this midwife was one where I want to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I also think that it was the extreme minority, because since I had a home birth, I know a lot of people who have had home births, and it's just positive experience, positive midwife experience, positive. And mine, in this case, ended up being negative, right? Like my first birth with Russell, Jennifer is just one of my most highly esteemed people in my life today. And she is the midwife who delivered my first son. But anyway, long story short, I decided, okay, we're going to do a planned home breech delivery with this midwife, and I got super sick at the end of my pregnancy. So sick. I had like the worst stomach bug of my life, and I was like, well, this is poor timing. Anyway, my midwife sent me in to get an ultrasound. She said, hey, you know what? I want to check your fluid levels, right? You've been losing a lot of fluid with the stomach bug. Let's go check your fluid levels. I was days before my due date. Anyway, the ultrasound came back and fluid levels good. Abdomen size of the baby, not good. And I was like, okay. Anyway, my midwife, we had a very quick back and forth exchange, and she said she was no longer able to deliver me at home. I don't know if it's, Boston is a little bit more strict on their rules. Every state is also really different with what they allow and don't allow midwives to, what lines they require midwives practice within. And she said, I'm not able to deliver you at home anymore. And I was like, okay, what? At that point, I will be honest, my trust was broken, because at that point I felt like, okay, you are very much not on the same team as me, or as much as I thought you were, because with a breech baby, there is a tremendous amount of pressure to get a C-section. I'm saying that with all due respect, because most of my friends who have had breech babies, it was he or she was delivered through a C-section. But I knew that was not for me. That was not the route I wanted to take. Of course, if absolute worst case scenario, fine. Great. I surrendered that to the Lord. It was really hard for me, honestly, but I knew that I didn't have to, and I didn't want to. And I knew that I could deliver the baby safely without a C-section. And it just so happens that if your midwife drops you and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody in this state, because we were still relatively new to Boston at the time. I was like, I don't know anybody. And pretty much everybody I knew would tell me, well, we're only going to deliver you by a C-section. So I knew I was really up a creek without a paddle at that point. The first thing I did was I got another ultrasound, because I was like, there's no way. It did end up being just an ultrasound tech error, because the next measurement on his abdomen was perfectly fine. He was very healthy. Her reasoning for that was like, oh, well, he might not be thriving. He might need resuscitation upon delivery, whatever, something that I cannot bring you at home. So I was like, okay, benefit of the doubt. I will deal with that later. I have a baby to deliver right now. What on earth am I going to do? At this point, I was 3 days before my due date. I was super stressed out. I actually remember I called my husband, who was in full-time school at the time, and I said, okay, I need you to drop what you're doing, please, and start calling all of these offices. I was caring for a toddler full time at that moment or whatever. I actually did leave him, leave him with some friends, because I was like, I need to, really just figure this out as quickly as I can. I called my mom and dad. I was like, please come up a little bit earlier, start your drive now. And by the grace of God, my husband reached the sweetest front desk woman of my life, because I was getting just every single phone call to every OB office in the area. Like, you're too late in your pregnancy, we won't take you as a new patient. Done. You're too late in your pregnancy, we won't take you as a new patient. Done. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Deliver the baby on the street? Like, obviously it makes sense, but I was like, okay, I am really truly up a creek without a paddle. It's like, somebody's got to help me out here. And there were a lot of different other things that I could have done, but I think I was, pressed for time, whatever, hindsight's 2020. If you find yourself in that situation, there's an incredible directory that I should link if I hopefully remember it, called Breech Without Borders. So if you do have a breech baby, there are providers of all different types, midwives, doctors, all the things throughout the country who say, hey, I will deliver this baby vaginally. I'm trained in that. It's something you have to be trained in. So there's a whole directory of people who have that skill set and that knowledge base that you can access for free online. Breech Without Borders. It's an incredible group. I could have driven across state lines to someone new, but I was so late that I was like, I could have this baby any second. I need someone here right now. And then finally we met this front desk woman who said, you know what? let me talk to the doctor. Long story short, the doctor said, come in today. Let's take a look at you. And I had a conversation with her. She, wanted to make sure that I could be a good candidate. She was looking to see if I was physically fit, which she did verbally say, you guys, so take care of yourselves during pregnancy. This is an athletic event. That's what I tell all my friends. I'm like, pregnancy is athletic. Take care of yourself. Train for it. She verbalized. She said, you look fit. Let's do it. I don't think she was looking for perfection. And I'm not perfect, but she could tell that I could grunge through it, that I could work through it. And you do need that to feel confident, I think, going into delivering a baby. And I was so nervous though, you guys, right? I didn't have a real relationship with this doctor. I did, she did earn my respect really quickly just because she was so candid and had a very open personality. She was kind of rough around the edges, but like very candid. You could tell exactly what she was thinking. And that's the kind of person that I get along with because I am extremely black and white. But long story short, I did acquiesce on a few things. I decided right then and there I was going to induce to make sure I could get her while she was on call or, within the area because we happened to be around a holiday and I didn't want to catch her when she was traveling or anything like that. I was like, okay, well, unfortunately, that was something that I didn't want to do. I did not want to induce, but I said, okay, I will induce, when's the latest I can go, whatever. And then the other thing I acquiesced on was she said that she only was trained in delivering breech babies with me on my back, which I was also not comfortable with. I delivered Russell kind of sort of on my knees, hanging a little bit on the tub. That was what was comfortable for me. And I knew that I wanted to be able to move to be what was most comfortable for the baby. But I said, okay, fine, whatever. Like, I've got you. You have said no to a C-section. And you've said, she said it too. She's an OBGYN, you guys, a medical OBGYN. She kind of teased me a little bit. She was like, I think home birth is absolutely nuts. And I said, okay, well, thank you for that. And, we had a great relationship. We still do. It's so funny because we have such different perspectives, you guys, but I'll never forget when I actually did come into my induction date or whatever for Luke, she told the whole floor that day, she said, okay guys, we're going to do a home birth in the hospital for this one. So it was this really kind of funny relationship that we developed and still developed. I mean, I sent her a Christmas card, for goodness sakes. She is someone I do really highly respect, even though we have such different perspectives on birth. She really thought I was absolutely nuts for liking home birth. But anyway, I digress. This really was a formative experience for me. And the breakdown of that was, I just remember saying to my husband, Drew, I said, I don't know why this is happening, but I feel like this is, the Lord just needs me to let go and to surrender. I just had this sense, right? Do you ever just have this sense that you cannot explain for why something's happening? I was like, I don't know why this is happening, but I feel like this actually has really little to do with Luke and all to do with me. And the Lord being after another, something that I am elevating, that I am idolizing. And at that point it was, my picture perfect birth, and I can be team home birth all the way, but ultimately God is in control. And that was the lesson I took away from this. And so I'll link to this song because it's so beautiful. It's the song that I played when I was heading to the hospital. My dad was driving, my husband was in the back. I left my mom at home watching Russell, and we drove to the hospital that I had never really visited before, never seen the labor and delivery unit before. It was just absolutely nuts. I'd met this doctor once. And he gives these beautiful words. It's Heaven by Brandon Lake. And he says, I can't get enough of you. Holy, you are holy. You are such a perfect Father. I'll worship you forever. And then he says, I'll lay down any treasure for us to be together. And it was in that moment in the car, I started crying. I'll lay down any treasure for us to be together. And I was like, oh Lord, that's it. That's what this whole past few days of chaos has been. Yes, Lord, I'm going to lay down my baby. I'm going to lay down the way I wanted the birth to go. I'm going to lay down my sense of security and confidence, because you guys, at that point, this might sound crazy to some people, but at that point I was scared of delivering in a hospital. That wasn't my comfort zone. My comfort zone at that point had been established and set by having already given birth in a home. That was the environment I was used to. That was what I understood. That was what I knew how to navigate. A hospital for me, I had never really been in one much as a pregnant client, to give a baby, I have a baby. That was very foreign to me. And, I felt like I had the rug totally pulled underneath me. And that was it. That was the purpose of this. And I'm so thankful for that. And trust me, the lessons did continue after having the baby. He's been just the continual lesson giver in a lot of ways. Episode, I've already had a guest come on, Dr. Stu Fishbein. He is a world-renowned pro expert in breech. Go listen to his episode if you are in that boat, or if you have a friend. I've had actually a lot of friends reach out to me and they're like, hey, I have a friend whose baby's breech. What should I send them? Whatever. And like the biggest thing is like, do not fear. Your body was designed to do this. And there's a lot of stuff out there that says, oh my gosh, be super scared. But that's the most important thing is don't be scared. Don't be scared, because anxiety is not what you need right now. And for me, I like to seek education. Education makes me feel like I can understand something, like, okay, well, I understand this now. And there is a lot of education out there about how, you look at the belly to butt ratio and like you're good. Anyway, I need to get back on track though. Go listen to Dr. Stu Fishbein. He knows so much more about this than I do. Anyway, I'm so grateful we finally made it to the hospital. I just remember like wanting to throw something at my sweet husband and my amazing dad, who I love. But it was funny going in as an induction. Like I'm like all baby, and they're just chilling in the corner. They were talking about like finance or something, and I just looked at them and I was like, can you guys please stop? Put my noise canceling headphones in, and I had walked lap after lap after lap. I just was walking, did a super gentle induction. I'm really grateful for that in hindsight. Very, very gentle induction, little dose by little dose. I didn't need a lot. They did allow me to go past 40 weeks because I told them, I was like, my first was almost 42 weeks. Please let me go past this. And of course, dealing with the holiday was like right up until the last second before, her plans would, make her unavailable to come to the birth, whatever. And so I started walking, and I did the same thing I did. If you haven't listened to my first birth story with Russell, I shared in there about how much I think that mindset plays into having a baby. And this is where I went. I started listening to voiceless, like no words being spoken, like instrumental music, just to cancel out all the noise. And I just started being like, okay, like, let's do this. Luke, you can come out. You can do it. Started talking to him. And it's not that you're talking to the baby necessarily, because at first, when I first heard that, I was like, that's so weird. But it's a mindset. You're getting ready for a race. You're telling yourself like, you can do this, you can run the laps, you can swim the laps, you can shoot the ball in the goal, right? Like every professional athlete does this visualization. Wow, I'm really killing it today. But like they all do this visualization, and that's what you need to do when you're having a baby. Like this is an athletic event. I've said it like 25 times and I need to stop, but that's what I think really helped me go really fast. Actually, my induction was super smooth because I was getting in the mindset and in the zone, canceled everything out, was doing lap after lap. And I was like, all right, Luke, let's do this. You're coming. We're going to do this. You're going to be good. We're going to be fine. And then Drew joined me on a lap. We felt a little pop and I was like, it's funny. And then all of a sudden I like peed my pants and I was like, that's what it feels like to have your water break. Awesome. And then I went back to the room, all the things. Anyway, I just continued laboring. I'm so thankful I did have a doula there. She was an amazing advocate for me. I had my dad there. I know a lot of people think that's really weird, but number one, I felt like my mom would be the best with Russell. They had just such a sweet bond at that time. Not that my dad didn't, but my dad was also a surgeon. So I felt like, okay, you know what? A hospital is scary to me, but it's not to him. And if there's some medical jargon that goes over my head, and I don't have a relationship yet with these nurses, I was like, I can always ask him. And so that was my safety net there. He was so good. He stayed off into a little corner. But at one point, he did count 11 to 15 people. I think upwards closer to like 15 people in this tiny little delivery room. They asked me super casually, like, hey, is it okay if we allow people in to learn from this? Because to them, a vaginal breech birth was really rare. And I was like, sure, of course, not really thinking of the ramifications that this room is going to be packed and everybody seeing that part of me. And I was like, okay, whatever. But it was extremely chaotic, and it gives me a lot of respect. I think for people who do choose to do a delivery in a hospital, it's really hard to focus. Really, really hard to focus with that amount of distraction. In my home birth with Russell, it was easy to focus. There weren't people interjecting, But here, you have a new nurse coming on shift and she's just doing her job. Like, it's not her fault necessarily, but like I'm in peak labor and, she comes up to me to introduce herself and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so sweet. But like, I cannot focus on this right now. I am like minutes away from delivering a baby. Nice to meet you, And I really am so thankful that the Lord allowed this to be my second experience, because I was really relying on this point at just like sheer discipline to focus throughout all these distractions. Because I think had it been my first time, it would have been nearly impossible. Sorry, I choked on my spit there. But anyway, I do remember I got to the point where I was like, I can't keep this baby and you need to send the doctor immediately. And again, a lot was going on in the room. I remember there was like a nurse like tidying up the room over here. And I'm like, what? You're tidying up? I am like, literally baby is coming out. That makes no sense to me, but that's fine. Just, again, a lot of distractions, but got to the pushing part. They had me get on my back. As soon as I got on my back, Luke's heart rate plummeted. like very, very low, to the point where my doula, who would have normally been like, okay, let's breathe through the contractions. So there's a difference. You can push, bear down, grunt down, and push like really hard abs. Or you can relax your body and breathe through contractions. That's what I did in a home birth. That's what you do when you're allowing the baby to take his or her time. You're going with the ebb and flow of your body. But with his heart rate plummeting like that, they both looked at me and they were like, push right now. I knew, I was like, okay, like he actually has no heartbeat right now. Like this is an emergency. And I pushed as hard as I could, 2 pushes. He came out. My pushing was really, really, really short. It was less than 7 minutes total. But in hindsight, I wish that I would have been able to move around. I knew going into this that I would have to be on my back, but the first thing most midwives are trained in is the second a baby's heart rate goes down, you change position. Right? Because at that point, the baby's so heavy that, you could just literally be compressing the umbilical cord and you just need to move around. So that's why oftentimes, moms are giving birth in the funniest little positions, because that's just where their body's telling them like, hey, this is where we're getting the best blood flow. So it's not really inherently an emergency. At least that's what I have grown to be confident in. But and it was really uncomfortable. My body was like, do not get on your back. But I was doing it because I knew I needed to for this doctor. And anyway, I pushed him right out, and my placenta came right out with him, which at first I was like, that's weird. Again, later I researched it. That's apparently really common with breech babies. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because, okay, you're gonna have to like visualize this with me. If their umbilical cord is connected to their belly button, okay, and if they are coming out butt first, that cord is starting to come out really early. If they're coming out head first, like there's still a lot of room up there for the umbilical cord to kind of float around, to extend out. But if they're coming out butt first, that's already making the umbilical cord pretty taut and sort of stretched almost at its max. And so then with that last push of like getting his head out last, because he was breech, then the umbilical cord just like got ripped off, like pop, came, and it all came right out. And I did get a little bit of a tear on this one. I did not with Russell. But it wasn't bad. Again, like, okay, that was something I was so scared of. I didn't even feel it, just so you know. It was a 1st-degree tear. Didn't even feel it. That was one of my biggest fears before having Russell. I was like, what if I tear? That sounds horrible. And some, can be. But anyway, that's not something I'm going to go down that rabbit hole right now. I feel like that's a good question for Jennifer in her episode. But my biggest disappointments were, again, hospital. There are a lot of different people. Someone forgot to tell the pediatrician. It's standard for a pediatrician to be like on standby or right there as soon as a baby's born, which is great. But no one told him that the baby was breech. With a breech baby, it's very normal for you to see meconium or baby poop come out first because you're squeezing their sweet little butts first. And that is actually an emergency if, there's a meconium when a baby's head comes out first, because you don't want that going in their mouth. You don't want them to aspirate on it and breathe that in. That is an emergency. He was not told the extremely important information that my baby was breech. And so he sprung into action, immediately took the baby to the other side of the room. And so here I am in a daze of like, I just pushed out a baby, and all I remember saying, and my sweet husband, I told him, I was like, this is your job. If this happens, you get the baby back to me. And he did exactly that. He was respectful about it, but he went over and he told the pediatrician, please get the baby back to his mom, please, please, please. And, there was just a lot of commotion because, of course, the pediatrician is like in urgent emergency mode. Even though he did not need to be, he just was given false information. But eventually the baby came back to me, not how I wanted. He was being, really shaken and just like jostled around, which is the standard, I think, in a lot of hospitals. They want to get this response out of a baby. But to me, that was extremely alarming because that's not what I had experienced before. Before this, I had experienced a little Russell coming up and just like very calmly, and the room was quiet. So you were able to observe like, okay, is he healthy? What's his APGAR score? Okay, are we good? But with this many people, that's hard to do. And Luke did. He had a great APGAR score, which is the score that babies are given. And, they're quickly assessed the second that they come out. Like, are you healthy? They look at their coloring, all these things. And so I was really upset by that because I wanted a baby to experience an opportunity to come into this world in peace and quiet and not being, in this perfect little bubble of floating water. And then, oh, you're shaking like this and you're in fluorescent lighting and all this stuff. I've let that go, but it did really bother me at the time because, again, that was the opposite of what I wanted. But I did have my baby. I was so thankful for that. But, I will put this plug in there. I think that's something to be really sensitive to. a mother processing birth. No matter how it goes, good, bad, anything in between. Not your expectations, of course, worst case scenario, loss, that's a given. But even anything else, I feel like really deserves a lot of space to process. It's a big event, and it's also an identity that is then imprinted on you, I think. The way you birth a baby, I think, is something that you kind of carry with you forever, because now you have this irreplaceable bond with that baby. Like, you remember their birth like it was yesterday. Like, it's just such a big event. And for me, it took a ton of processing, and so many people like brush that off. They're like, you have a healthy baby. And, I had a great conversation with my friend Maddie on here, who had a C-section delivery, and she pushes back on that in the most beautiful way. So if that is something that you have struggled with too, where people have kind of pushed your processing aside and they're like, okay, well, you have a healthy baby, get over it, basically, which of course, but she says it so beautifully. She says, you can be both grateful for a healthy baby and grieve, mixed up expectations or, things that didn't go your way, things that, you were just blindsided by, things you have to process in hindsight. You can do both at the same time. And I think that that's really important to emphasize for any new mom, because we all kind of find ourselves in positions of supporting a new mom at some point, whether you're bringing them a dinner or you're texting them, whatever. I just think that's really important. And anyway, this is where I bring myself in this little story. We had the baby. It was hilarious because now I finally understood all of the jokes on social media about how just impossible it is to sleep in a hospital after you've had a baby, because everybody on their new shift is coming in to interrupt you, even if it's like literally you finally fell asleep 30 seconds earlier. That was really funny. Like, Drew and I kind of busted out laughing because we were like, oh, okay, like this is how this actually is. And I remember I was really adamant about getting out of there. I wanted to get home to Russell. I missed him so much. I kind of just wanted to get out of the noise of the hospital and get home to process. And I knew I was healthy, he was healthy, everything. And so we left actually literally 24 hours on the dot. They rushed our paperwork, everything to get us out. One of the things I actually did do, I forgot to say, I was GBS positive and I chose to get the antibiotics because I wanted to be able to leave after 24 hours. If you are GBS positive and you do not get antibiotics at many hospitals, they require that you stay for at least 48. I know that sounds so silly. I just wanted out of there. I wanted to get home. It was a holiday. I wanted to just be in peace and quiet, be able to process, be able to, adjust, sleep, all the things. In hindsight, I think I would have, if I had had more time, I probably would have just treated myself for GBS, because there are some things you can do that, have pretty high rates of having you not test GBS positive, have you test negative, I guess. But anyway, those are pretty much most of the things that I remember. And then we went back home. We celebrated the holiday. Actually, no, that's not true. Russell came to visit us. My mom brought him, and it was just so precious. He stayed up super, super late. He got to hold Luke for the first time. He was just like, his eyes wide open. He's like, whoa, a baby. And I kind of wish that I hadn't been so nervous at first. I was really nervous having him, letting him touch the baby, because I was like, oh, is he going to be gentle? And what I had learned very quickly is that actually, yeah, I feel like most toddlers have this innate sixth sense understanding that, okay, yeah, you do need to be gentle around a baby. It was his first time really being that close to a little newborn baby, and it was like a natural ability. It was like he knew immediately to be gentle. So I wish that I had maybe actually let him hold Luke at first. That's like a little mini regret. But anyway, as I continue to process over days, weeks, months, I learned a lot that I'm not going to share here because it could just go on and on and on. Learned a lot about a breech baby, that, if you've had a breech baby, feel free to reach out to me. I actually learned some things that, he came out super tight. I wish I had gone to a chiropractor ASAP, because it would have alleviated a lot of other issues he had because of that. You're just kind of in a tighter little ball inside there. But anyway, I am, of course, so grateful for both of my little boys. I'm so grateful for the experiences that I had, albeit extremely different and very much not what I thought I wanted. It was exactly what the Lord knew I needed. And that is the moral of Luke's birth, and both of them were just extremely formative, very growth-oriented experiences that I'm so grateful for. But I hope that this encouraged you, gave you a little bit of, maybe something to store away for a future birth, because that's honestly the biggest place where I learned heading into both of mine, was I learned from other women's birth stories. I took a nugget here, a hindsight, bias there, a lesson learned there, and I took that as fuel to help me decide what was best for me. So I hope that this did just that, and thank you guys much. Thanks so much for listening to Motherhood Equipped. Remember, you don't have to have it all together. You just have to be willing to bet on yourself and then trust the Lord every step of the way, walking boldly in the purpose He has for you. I remember very vividly searching for my first podcast related to motherhood when I was in the depths of postpartum after having my first, and I would have never found the encouragement I needed had the podcast I found not had enough reviews to show up in my feed when I searched. So I'd love to ask if you would pass this gift along to another mom needing encouragement and leave us a review so that we show up in other people's feeds, and also just share this with one friend who comes to mind. Thanks so much.